Well, hello class, and welcome to the beginning of Unit 4. We are 6 weeks into our 16-week semester, believe it or not, and I continue to be really impressed by the caliber of work that you are doing. I was just talking with a colleague today, and he was asking about some of the online coursework that I teach and was describing this class, and he's like, wow, that sounds like a really great class. It sounds like, it's a decent amount of work too, and, I think in some respects, yes, and in some respects, it's different, right? So, again, as I mentioned even last week, I do hope that you're having a great time with the content, really finding your thinking, your approach to content is just really valuable and important. So thank you for continuing to engage in the ways that you've been doing. Your questions that you asked even last unit were really thoughtful, really impressed. I love kind of all the different questions that come out of the discussions and the reading, knowing that y'all kind of see things through a different bit of a lens, right? So you have different perspectives and takes on the content, and you just kind of think differently. So I appreciate your valuable contributions and insights to that. So keep up the good work. Hope you, again, as I mentioned last time, I came with a video, that you're finding some respite, some peace, some rest, some comfort, just some even really enjoyment in this class. I know that as I read your content and engage in conversation, emails, and all that, I really am enjoying my time spent with you. So this week, another full, week or unit, if you will. So we've got this video, obviously, hopefully you're watching all these videos as there is some really important content. I have some really important articles for you to read, just some things. So why I really appreciate this article, and I'm looking over to my screen here so I can read you the exact title, but why you should stop trying to achieve work-life balance, the role of work in psychological health and well-being, and then career and personal counseling, comparing process and outcomes. So some great content to be considering. I want to just briefly touch on this idea of why we should stop trying to achieve work-life balance. Let me just put it this way. We should stop trying to achieve that because it's just not possible. I mean, frankly stated, it's just not possible. If you think about all the hours in the week and all the hours that we spend working, especially in the Southern California region, whether it's, the high desert, San Diego, Orange County, Inland Empire, here in Los Angeles, the greater part of Azusa, it's still busy, right? There's still traffic. Everywhere you look, there's traffic. I drove to a concert last night in West Hollywood, and it's not a huge distance from my home, but just the time it took to get there, all the different cities and that we're driving through, it takes quite a long time to make that happen. And so let's just kind of break this down. If you think about it, let's say we're working a traditional 40-hour work week. Okay, so that's 40 hours of work, and then we have about an hour of lunch in between, right? It's 4 hours on the bottom half and 4 hours on the top half of the day, with an hour wedged in between for lunch. That's 9 hours a day. Okay, so now there's 45 hours, right? 9 times 5, 45. So then let's factor in, let's just call it an hour of commute each way, right? I know it's not always the case, but probably for many of us it is. Let's say average it out. Let's just say, for sake of the argument, an hour each way. So now I've taken my 9-hour workday, including my lunch break, and I've added on 2 additional hours to make it 11 hours out of 24. Okay, so 11 hours out of 24 leaves me with 13 hours. Although in an ideal world, we would love to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Probably reality is we're getting somewhere around 5 or 6. So let's call it 6. I've got 11 hours with work and drive time. I've got 6 hours of sleep, so already there's 17 hours. And then let's factor in just kind of personal grooming, shower, all the different things that take place in the morning to get ready for work. Let's tack another, hour on top of that. So there's 17, 18, and maybe there's an hour of exercise or walk or something like that. Just kind of time to rest. Oh, and then there's breakfast and lunch and dinner. So let's just call that another hour. So we're looking at 18, 19 hours. And then we're supposed to have the rest of our day to kind of do whatever, right? So if we've got 19 hours that are taken up with something that's really not able to not be taken up with that, how on earth can we have a work-life balance? So I think one of the things that I want us to consider is, how do we think about work and life in the midst of all that's happening? It's not a balance, it's more of an integration. And are we viewing everything that we do from the perspective and standpoint of it being part of a station of vocation? Okay, if we go back to the Reformation and Martin Luther, back 500 and some years ago, he really talked about this, what he called the doctrine of vocation, and that every aspect of what we did in life, whether it was leisure, whether it was work, whether it was sleep, whether it was eat, whether it was being, husband, wife, son, brother, daughter, friend, neighbor, those are all stations of vocation. There's a great book called When I Rest, I Feel Guilty. It's from the 70s, and I think sometimes there's this thought, this idea that if I'm resting, there's a guilt that comes with that. Oh my goodness, I can't rest because I have so much to do. And yet, when we think about balance, or we think more along the lines of integration, and we think about how important rest is, if you think about, you have the Christian and the Jewish traditions with this idea of Sabbath, right? So Scripture talks a lot about Sabbath. If you think about, the 10 Commandments given to us in the Old Testament, if you read through those 10 Commandments, the one that's given the most ink on the page, so to speak, is that of Sabbath. And yet today we are so busy that we don't take time to rest. And I would argue that we're so busy, we're too busy not to rest. And I think that rest helps us to kind of reset, even if it's 10, 15 minutes in the day, just to rest, to pray, to think, to kind of clear our minds. That 10 or 15 minutes, man, that rest really helps us to reset for the rest of our time. If we can take a full day, even better. I know that's sometimes very challenging, especially when you're working and schooling and having family and all the different, church and life and everything in between. It's really hard. So I want to encourage you to think about it from more of an integration standpoint. Are you giving your most? Are you giving your best in every aspect as you view them all as varying stations of vocation? And I think that's what we'll get at in some of the reading, especially as we look at Schwen and Bass. So as you're looking through and you're reading these articles and you're reading Schwen and Bass and all the different content, I might encourage you to kind of think through it with that lens, that frame of mind, to think through with this perspective of it's not about work-life balance, because that's just not possible, but it's more about work-life integration. Is it okay to have things segmented, even if you're not a rule or a list maker or rule follower, so to speak, but to say that from this time to this time I work, from this time to this time I do homework, from this time to this time I have a meal, from this time to this time I hang out with my family. I think that's okay. Even some of you probably calendar those items. Having a plan is, I think, very helpful, especially in the midst of the busyness of life. But if we are able to unlearn this idea that there is such a thing as work-life balance, then I think it makes it much easier for us to actually have peace and rest in the midst of what might seem a bit of chaos. All right, so just I think a way to reframe, to rethink, to relearn what it is that we've been taught in the past. So great job on the work so far. This is a new way of thinking, and I hope it's even helpful for you personally, but also I would hope that it's helpful for you professionally as you kind of interpret this content to be helpful in conversations that you have with clients, both now and in the future. As per the usual, we have our optional discussion. You can engage with that if you'd like. We have the Schwen and Bass entering discussion. Remember, your initial entry is due Sunday at midnight, and then you have to engage on somebody else's post for two of your classmates, on somebody else's, and back and forth throughout the remainder of the unit. So that's the second week of the unit. We have case study number 4. You've had some great responses there. Make sure, again, they're very thorough and thoughtful in your response. If you're being thorough and thoughtful, it's going to be a decent response, right? If it's too brief, you'll probably get a feedback from me that says be thorough and thoughtful in the future, more so in the future. I want to see more content, right? I really want to see that you've thought through it and you're able to kind of process through your spots and kind of work them out by way of sharing. So I understand that you really understand what you're trying to accomplish by way of incorporating all of the things that you have learned so far in the class. Okay, and then exercise 2, and I'm going to get to that in a second, and then you have LibTAC 321 number 2. Okay, so this is a really important process for me to get questions from you so I can then respond and engage and give you more information about the content of the class. So the exercise number 2, you'll look at page 165 and 10. Okay, and this is just something, again, it's for you to pause. I want you just to stop, okay, have some time to think, to process, to work through your long-term goals, your 5-year goals, your 1-year goals, kind of work in reverse. Okay, I want to be blank because I'm interested in blank and value blank. This may be something for you that it might even help you kind of start thinking about a personal mission statement. From a missional alignment, are you in line? Are you aligned with what it is that you want to do long term? I hope so, right? My strengths lie in, my weaknesses lie in. Resources for achieving my goals are this, right? Pathways, steps to achieve the goals are this or these. Alternative short range plan is if for some reason this doesn't work out, I can pivot and go this direction. And then time needed to enter this career alternative, just think through that. Again, I just want you to be processing these things that probably, because you're not forced to sometimes, you don't take time to think through. And I think it's very valuable for us to go through these practices so that we can think about it ourselves, make sure you're on the right path, and if you think you might need to veer a little bit differently, where would you go, right? What direction would you head? We looked at transferable skills in the past, and now we're looking here along the lines of what's a career alternative, and why are we doing that? Not because I want to discourage you from going forward and pursuing MFT work, but what are some other options in case, and if nothing else, you're like, I don't have a career alternative. This is it. Like, it's make or break, baby. That's okay. You're probably going to work with folks that are going to need career alternatives. So how are you then doing that with them? I think it's very helpful. If you've gone through it yourself, you can speak to how effective it is, and then you can assign that to other people that you're working with in the future. All right, so that's going to be great. And then 3, 2, 1 on lip tech. Remember, 3 takeaways, 2 questions, 1 actionable item. What could you put into practice literally tomorrow based upon what you've read in the lip tech text? All right, so have a great week, great unit. Again, as usual, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me, email, and I'll get right back to you. Thanks so much for your contributions. I know a lot's going on. I'm praying for you all this week, and I'm happy to just do it all, anything and everything I can to support you in your studies. Have a great week, and we will see you online.